16 Minutes of Care is a podcast based on the 𝗃𝗏 principles, a strategic framework that reveals how brands create impact by caring and, as a result, grow their business. In each episode, 𝗃𝗏𝗼𝗶 welcomes a company executive who explains how care has helped their business grow successfully and sustainably.
Welcome in 16 Minutes of Care, the new podcast by the 𝗃𝗏 Principles. Today I have a guest and he is called Thomas Van Eeckhout. He is the CEO of Easi, and Easi is an IT services and solutions company specialized in mid-size and large companies. Welcome, Thomas.
Hi there, Isabel.
Very nice to have you here. And my dog seems to be joining us straight away. As I mentioned, she's part of the podcast, so she always needs to come and say hi.
Okay.
Thomas, this is the third season I'm recording for the podcast of the 𝗃𝗏 Principles, and from the second season on, I always ask in my network, listen, I have a little spot for a very caring company. Does anybody in my network know a company? And Easi came up and was suggested because you have an amazing policy towards people and you're very caring for your own people, your employees. Could you explain me a little bit more where this focus on care for people comes from?
Mm-hmm. It's actually basically from an economical perspective that it just makes sense to focus on people and to be very people-centric. As you mentioned, we're a services company, so whenever services are a big part of what you do, then the people aspect becomes really crucial. And I'm very much convinced that it is almost that it is a competitive advantage that we have in the market. In IT, the challenge is not to find the projects or the customers. The challenge is to find the people in order to deliver those projects. So basically that people focus allows us to have a very strong story also towards the employment market. And more I notice that companies, whenever they need to decide on a new IT supplier or a new IT partner, I believe they should take that aspect into account, because if you work with an IT company that is not capable of hiring and retaining people, then you're going to have problems sooner or later. So it's just very much part of our business strategy, that focus on people.
Is it something that the founder, 𝗃𝗏𝗼𝗶𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, sorry,
Okay.
already had it from the start in the company, or is it something that came later?
Salvatore has had a very big impact on the DNA, obviously, of the company. He co-founded Easi in 1999, and then in 2011 he continued by himself. They split up as associates, and I may be able to touch upon that later on as well. Salvatore already had that feeling and that conviction that people are basically at the center of what we do, and if we want to be successful, then we need to focus on that part. So he had that from the beginning. I think the evolution that we had throughout the years has been to really formalize that focus and to build systems and processes that really force us to be people-centric, because it's not that difficult to claim that you're people-centric as a company, but it's all about execution, and it's about living by that conviction day after day after day, and when you do that, you notice that it becomes stronger and stronger, and so it was there since the beginning, but we really took it to another level, and it's not finished. I'm really convinced that what we're doing today, we will probably, or I hope, or it's my ambition to do it even better next year and the year afterwards and the year after that as well.
Yes, because I can imagine that working with people and being so people-centric and really placing that in the core of your business strategy is an ongoing adapting strategy, because what people demand today is very different from what they were demanding 10 years ago, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's very clear nowadays in 2022 that people's ambitions and aspirations and basically what they expect from an employer is very much different from what we saw in 2019 before the entire COVID period. And the dynamic in the market has changed drastically as well. I started working at Easi in 2006, was my first employer at that time. And I remember that as a candidate or as somebody that was just entering that market, I was basically happy that I found a company that wanted to hire me. And nowadays, whenever we discuss with candidates, we really need to, it's not really about convincing, but that dynamic change. We really need to do our best and make sure that we have a strong story towards people. And that aspect wasn't really present in 2006, at least in my experience.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm always saying the war on talent is over, talent has won. Yeah. And this is what you feel now, is that employees have the power to choose a company they most feel or they belong to, or they feel the internal culture a fit with themselves.
Indeed, and there also is a risk in that dynamic, because whenever an employer really wants to hire someone because of an economical necessity, then we tend maybe to forget that it's very important to have a cultural match and a cultural fit with that person. So we don't try to basically seduce candidates. We're really explicit about the culture we have and what we expect, because from the outside, Easi is a great employer, and obviously we are with the Great Place to Work label and all of those things. But we really combine that happiness at work with performance. It's not just having fun and goofing around. It's hard work, but we compensate that hard work with a context where people can actually be happy in what they do. So that balance remains important. We can't just try to onboard any candidate, because it will definitely have an impact on the culture, the DNA of the company. So the balance is very important.
It's very important. We'll talk a bit more about the importance of a strong culture in the second episode. But for this first episode, what really triggered me when I started to research Easi is the shareholdership model. So when somebody works for 2 years at Easi, there is a possibility to become a shareholder.
Yes, indeed.
That's quite unique.
It is quite unique. I noticed that more and more companies are asking questions about it and are basically interested in taking that step. I love to share the ins and outs of that model, and it basically just makes sense. But it's a cultural thing. We first had the culture, and then we opened up the capital. And it's the fact that we had that culture allowed us to do that in a very healthy and a very fun way as well. But it's not the other way around. Sometimes I have the feeling that companies want to create the culture, and so they ask themselves if they could open up the capital of the company. But that's not the right thing to do.
Do you feel that sometimes companies might do that to lock employees? Instead of really, like you say, making them part of the company because there's a huge cultural fit? Yeah,
indeed. That's the feeling I sometimes have. But I prefer to just talk about what we do. And in our model, it makes sense. We really consider Easi to be our company. It's not my company. It's not Salvatore's company. It really is our company. So we will always put the company's interest before our own interest, and it just makes sense that if we want to share everything we have, and we want to share responsibility, we want to take decisions all together, that is the way we want to manage the company. So it just makes sense to share the profit of the company as well with all employees. So nowadays we have 100 shareholders. And it's basically a direction that we will continue to follow. So our goal is to continue and to have as much shareholders as possible, but not just anybody can become a shareholder. We really want to have Easi ambassadors. We really want people that live by our values, people that have a positive impact in the company. They really have that opportunity to become a shareholder.
And can you explain a bit more in depth how the system works? I understood it's 1 out of 3 employees, more or less. So when you say about 100 shareholders, you have more or less 300 people.
Yeah, a bit more already.
A bit more already, yes, yeah. Going fast always. But could you explain a bit more? So imagine I work for 2 years at Easi. How does it work? How can I become a shareholder as an employee?
So it all starts with the motivation that comes from the employee. We will never push people towards the shareholdership. It has to come from themselves. So whenever they basically share the fact that they are interested, then we basically start a process which is always started at the same time, at the beginning of the year. And afterwards there's an evaluation which is done by management in general, and we will really look not really much at the competence part, because skills, I think we can agree, skills can be trained, but values and personality and attitude, it's a bit more difficult to train them. So it's really about those aspects, and whenever we see a fit, then we take the next step, which basically is an information meeting. We really go into details of the model, of the ins and outs, of the consequences and all of those things. We have a shareholder agreement which really takes into account all possible scenarios in the career of a certain person. And then basically they have to invest, they have to put money on the table.
Okay.
And it's at least 25,000 euros, so it's not just it's not something that you have laying around on the kitchen table. So it has to hurt a bit. It's too easy to say, yeah, I want to be part of the story, I want to be part, and I want to have shares, but I don't want to invest. So it really is a choice, it's a decision, and I think a lot of my colleagues at a certain point in time had a discussion with their spouse or at the kitchen table, explaining that a certain renovation or some other project would not take place at that moment because he or she wants to invest in the company, and that is it's a nice dynamic, and it's always like that. If we give something to someone, it has less value than if somebody has to put money on the table. So that is an important aspect, and we really have tried over the past years to basically have those different possible steps in a model, so people know what the amount they can invest or they should invest at the beginning. They know at what times they have the possibility to buy extra shares, and so it's quite.
And does, for instance, with extra shares comes extra responsibility, or has it nothing to do with the job title you have, the level of seniority you have?
It is related.
It is related.
So we basically have a very transparent model. We have identified and described in detail really what we expect from all different levels inside of the company, and those levels also define the stake you can have inside of the company. We want to have a healthy balance. Somebody that has been in the company for 2 or 3 years, and with limited responsibility, it's logical to have a smaller stake than somebody that has been with us for 15 years and that has a senior management function. So,
of course, but it's open to all functions.
Yeah.
It's not like it's only the IT department or it's only sales department.
No.
Anybody can become a shareholder if you have the right attitude, if you're interested, and of course if you put the money on the table.
Yeah, that's basically the model. So it's about the values, it's about the attitude, and everybody can join. I have a colleague who in the past has been a receptionist, and when she was a receptionist, she decided to invest in the company, which is, I think, quite unique. But there's nothing as powerful as that.
It's a very important function. People
Yes.
always forget it's the first face you see when you enter a company.
Yes, indeed.
It's crucial.
Yeah, so it was very nice to really feel that ambition and to see that motivation. And she has really had a very big impact on the entire company over the past years. And she evolved from that receptionist role to an office management role, and I'm really happy to have her on board. Yeah. But it's about values and attitude. Values and attitude.
Is it more difficult then to, because normally in a traditional company there's a CEO and there's a committee of directors and they take all the decisions. You have more than about 100 shareholders. Is it more difficult then to?
No, it's not. It's not. We don't have to have the approval of 100 shareholders before we, for example, close an acquisition. So we basically, we are a participative company. I will never take an important decision just by myself. We will always consult the people that will be impacted by such a decision. And it's the same for all of those big decisions. So it's not just a thing that is being decided by shareholders. It's basically something that we decide on all together. And then again, as a company, you have to be able to move forward and to take the decisions that you need to take as a director of a company. So it doesn't slow us down. We remain very agile, but we will always communicate in the most transparent way. So whenever we start discussing an acquisition, for example, we will inform our shareholders, and we will inform them if that, for example, might have an impact on dividends and all of those things. So it's a healthy balance again between consulting people, involving everybody in such decisions, and then again allowing us or forcing ourselves to move and move fast whenever it's needed.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. This is it for the first episode, but I definitely want to know more about their strong and unique internal culture and their values. So stay tuned, listen or watch the second episode. See you. Thank you very much and take care.
Want to create lasting impact with your brand while feeding sustainable growth? Check out 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲 and see how we can help you. 16 Minutes of Care is an independent production from 𝗃𝗵𝗲 𝗖𝗵𝗲, brand strategist, founder of the CARE Principles, and author of the book, Does Your Brand Care? Help us reach more companies who are looking for caring and sustainable growth by giving this podcast all the stars it deserves and by sharing it in your network. Thank you and take care.